So hello OBTS. Last time when I attended OBTS, it was like 3 years ago. It was in Hawaii. And then the COVID started and I was stuck in Hawaii and yeah, Poland closed borders. So I hope that will not be the case this time. But yeah, my today's talk is what happens when your Mac stays on Apple's iCloud bypassing Mac privacy mechanisms. So my name is Wojciech Regula, and I'm a head of mobile security at Securing. I'm mostly focused on iOS and macOS application security. In my free time, I run a blog, of course, about Apple security. Somebody of you may know me from iOS Security Suite that I am creator of. That's a free open source library that helps developers making sure that their applications are run on secure iPhones. And recently, we also started in securing a new service that is a macOS environment security testing. But this talk is a kind of research continuation of presentation that we made with Chaba, which should be probably there here on the audience. So we bypassed. We found over 20 ways to bypass TCC, local privacy mechanisms. By the way, we're gonna have a next talk about next 20 ways to bypass TCC this year on Black Hat in London. But that's a kind of fork. And this presentation, yeah, maybe let's start from agenda. So at first, I will quickly introduce you to some of the macOS privacy mechanisms. I will show you how macOS entitlement works in general and how to attack them, what's the problem with those entitlements. And then using two really simple vulnerabilities, I will show you that it was possible to attack macOS privacy, but not by bypassing local mechanisms, but by taking those privacy-sensitive resources directly from iCloud. Yeah, demos and further exploitation is the next point. So this research is not finished. As for now, I was able to get an unauthorized access to the user's location, contacts, calendars, and reminders. But probably there will be more resources that can be gained with this technique. But you will see the demos. So yeah, let's start with the introduction to macOS security mechanisms. So I selected the system integrity protection. That's the most important thing from this presentation perspective. So it's based on sandbox kernel extension and it restricts access to many directories. And as this system integrity protection, it also will, for example, deny debugger attachments to processes that are directly signed by Apple. So summing it up, on macOS, you are not a god if you have root. Even if you have root, you still cannot do everything you want with your operating system. That's why we call also system integrity protection as rootless. And when the system integrity protection is turned on, and that's the default configuration, of course, and you, as an application, try to access some privacy-sensitive resources, like, for example, address book, you will see a prompt. And Apple wanted to make sure that there is a clear user intention that the physical user clicks on that prompt. So, for example, if you have root access on Mac machine and you would do this ls but with sudo, the result would be exactly the same. Even if you have root but you don't have access to the TCP protected resources, there will be a prompt that will be triggered by the operating system. And from the user's perspective, you may know TCC from the security and privacy pane. So as you can see, for example, in automation, the TCC is really granular. You can select which application could control what application. But what are the privacy-sensitive resources according to Apple? So if you visit the Apple Security Bounty website and you go to the very bottom after 2 asterisks, you will read that sensitive data includes contents of contacts, mail, messages, notes, photos, or real-time or historical precise location data. However, TCC itself protects more resources. As you can see, those icons are of course taken from Mac, but as you can see, like TCC protects also camera, automation, motion, photos, music, and other resources that are sensitive for the user. So that's TCC is now a really huge mechanism. And one more thing about one more security mechanisms on macOS that are entitlements. So what you should know about entitlements, that they are an XML-based format, and they are validated mostly by Apple Mobile Fire Integrity, which is again a kernel extension that implements a mandatory access control framework policy and has a user space daemon. But let's take a look on it in practice. So if we have a simple Hello World application, and we take a simple entitlements file, and as you can see, this entitlement is private. That's an entitlement that allows taking over the whole TCC. And you can check with CodeSign tool that the Hello World application is not signed, but then if you sign it with an empty profile and you try to open it, this application will be instantly killed, because we are not Apple. We cannot sign executables with private entitlements, right? If you open log console, you will see that actually M5 killed it, so restricted entitlements not validated, bailing out. So that's why the process was killed. Okay, so that was the quick introduction to the basic security mechanisms on Mac. Now let's focus on the exploitation. There is a problem with macOS entitlements because mostly macOS verifies entitlements of the running application, of the running process. And if you somehow make that process load your code and you will execute this code in the context of the process, macOS will be totally okay with that. So this is really a problem, and we found like many vulnerabilities in the code injection types. So for today's talk, I selected the iCloud helper XPC helper that under the hood it uses an old C-based XPC API for inter-process communication, and it will provide us iCloud tokens when nicely asked. By the way, I made the whole series about exploiting XPC on macOS, so if you are interested in it, feel free to visit my blog. But how does it look like, the helper, how does it look like from our reversing engineering perspective? So there is a method, validate client with process identifier, that in the end will create sec code of the connecting process. It uses Audi token, so if you thought about attacking it via process identifier, it won't work. But basing on that Audi token, this helper will verify if the connecting client has a private iCloud entitlement. If the client has the entitlement, this XPC connection will be successfully handled by the helper. But the thing we have to still think about it is that the XPC communication has its own structure, so we have to provide that expected structure to the helper in order to get those iCloud tokens. So let's start with writing the code that we will be injecting somewhere. The first thing is that we have to establish the XPC connection, provide the structure that the helper expects for, and send it and receive the response from it. Okay, so now where we can inject this our malicious code. So it turns out that GarageBand has a private iCloud entitlement and disables library validation. And modification one of those dynamic libraries that GarageBand loads will give us the privileged context of the GarageBand with that private iCloud entitlement. And with that knowledge, we will be able to use that code I showed you to successfully connect to the iCloud helper. So let's confirm if we can easily inject to the GarageBand. It turned out that, as you can see here on the slide, there is hardened runtime turned on. When hardened runtime is turned on, the application will not allow you injecting your code unless it is signed with Apple or the same developer certificate. However, developers on purpose can disable some of the hardened runtime features, and that was the case in GarageBand. So as you can see, the private iCloud account access, and in the same time disable library validation entitlement. So yeah, let's now find a target framework which we can do a dial-up proxying attack. So if you open GarageBand and you will take a look at the framework structure, you will see plenty of frameworks. So for the exploitation, I took the OAuth 2 client framework. And because I'm a big fan of automation of the exploitation process, and I really recommend you doing the same, because when Apple reaches you out after some time and asks you, oh, has this been properly fixed? You can just run the script and you will see if that was fixed or not, right? If the exploits still work. But yeah, that's the shell script that was included in my proof of concept. So let's take a look at it. So at first I was copying the GarageBand to temporary directory. I was removing the signature, but only of the framework that we are going to proxy. I moved the dial-up of that framework to a new location just by appending it with one on at the end. I copied the proxying dial-up that I compiled, that one with the C code I showed you before. I once again removed the signature again of the whole framework, fixed some airpath stuff. Then I copied the vulnerable, it's not vulnerable actually, the iCloud helper that will provide us the iCloud tokens. And in the end, just I had to open GarageBand. So now I will show you the demo. That's the Xcode project. So it's really simple. It will take a while to compile it and copy the GarageBand to the proper location. But as you can see, that's the bash script, the same one. Have to be patient for a while, because the exploit is required to copy the whole GarageBand to TMP. And when I launch it, the gatekeeper, as you can see, has to check it. But once it's checked, the exploit will NSLog the results in the console. Yeah, so we have all of the tokens which were stored in iCloud helper, and as you can see, there is a lot of different, sometimes juicy information about your Apple account. And it was fixed already, so that's good. You are not vulnerable to it anymore. And the second application that was vulnerable to this attack was iMovie. And the thing with iMovie was even simpler because iMovie had the same private iCloud entitlement, but in the same time, it didn't have the hardened runtime turned on at all. So you may ask, okay, but even if it does not have the hardened runtime turned on, it's still an application signed by Apple, right? So the built insert libraries should not work. But the thing is that if Apple signed their applications with the App Store certificate, it's a different certificate which will allow us to inject code with built insert libraries. So yeah, the same scenario, we inject our compiled dilib to the iMovie, and again we will be able to do the same. So just to prove it, flags, only kill flag is turned on in iMovie. As you can see, this certificate has team identifier, so it means that's the certificate that Apple uses for deploying App Store's applications. And yeah, the private iCloud Accents entitlement. The exploitation code is really simple. Just I was copying the iMovie to temporary directory. Once again, I copied the framework, and by built insert libraries, I was injecting the malicious dynamic library right to the iMovie. And just to prove it that the exploitation succeeded, you can see the same response with the iCloud tokens. It was fixed. So by the way, congrats to all other researchers that found this vulnerability also. But then when there was an advisory that Apple fixed that application, I was wondering how did they do it. So I took a look at it once again, and it turned on that the fix was not complete. And as you can see in advisory, take a look at this description. The issue was addressed by enabling hardened runtime, and this description is the same. So I was like a bit confused. Like, so in the end, what changed, right? It turned out that Apple have made a new way to fix downgrade vulnerabilities, and it's a good technique, I have to say. So now Apple, if there will be a possibility for downgrade attack for one of your exploits, they ban those applications directly in Amphi. So as you can see, this is a screenshot directly from the Amphi decompilation. So they set a list of requirements for the apps, and they set it by they determine which Apple ID, bundle ID should obey those rules. And if you, for example, take now iMovie, M5 will say, oh, this iMovie doesn't have the hardened runtime turned on, so it's not ready to be launched, right? So this is now how those vulnerabilities are fixed. But coming back to the exploitation process, I was wondering what are those iCloud tokens. So those are stored in macOS keychain under the following names. So as you can see, there is juicy stuff like iCloud token, Find My Friends app token, key transparency token, maps token, Apple account token, device locator token. So a lot of juicy tokens, right? The iCloud helper could give to you. So now let's do something with those tokens. So I made a new VM. I disabled system integrity protection. I opened an HTTP proxy, and I was, opening all the applications that synchronize somehow their data with iCloud. And yeah, for example, how does the Find My application on your Mac gets your location? So it's really simple. It just sent an HTTP post request to the following URL. It provides the token, and that's it. So, especially for reporting purposes to Apple, I prepared a quick demo. So you open it, provide the token. Under the hood, it refreshes the Find My Session because it was required to do so. And in the response, again a JSON, but if you grab for latitude or longitude, you get an unauthorized access to location data, right, without raising any prompts, and without root, of course. How it works with contacts, almost the same, HTTP request. So, but this is a two-step exploitation. At first, you have to ask about the VCF files, and then when you grab the name of the VCF file, in the second request, you request for it, and iCloud will happily return it to you with your contacts data, again, without any additional TCC prompts. As I showed you at the beginning of this presentation, when I was trying to access contacts from terminal, there was a prompt, right? This time we have access to the contacts without raising any prompt, but not by bypassing local mechanisms, but by directly asking for it, the iCloud. Calendar, very same technique. Again, two steps. So you firstly ask for the ICS, and then you get the events you have stored in your calendar. You may also ask me, what's that number? That's your iCloud identifier. But in the iCloud helper XPC response, it's included, so you can just take it from it, and you're all set. You have everything you need to exploit it. The same with reminders. Again, an HTTP request, and that's it. We have access to the iCloud data. But I said at the beginning that this research is not completed. There is still something to do. So if you'd like to poke with iCloud, notes, use it. Photos, for example, iMessages. When I was proxying those three applications, under the hood, I saw that they use protobuf, so it's kind of harder to reverse, but it's of course doable. So if you'd like to do such research, you feel free to do it. It's still open. Yeah. So regarding the conclusion, so at the beginning of this presentation, I quickly introduced you to basic macOS security mechanisms. Then we attacked the TCC without actually touching TCC. We took all those information directly from iCloud. So now you may ask me, okay, Wojtek, so how to protect? Of course, at first, update your Macs and check your iCloud settings. By default, you synchronize probably all of your data that should be synchronized with iCloud, but maybe you're not happy with synchronizing all of your data from photos, mail, contacts, etc. So just feel free to disable it if you don't like to share those data with iCloud. And that's it for today's presentation. So thank you very much.